Well, maybe I'll begin today by just talking about the fact that when we win in November, and I really mean when, it will be because of all of you. It'll be because of the passion and the dedication and the sheer hard work of not just the people in this room, but the organizing that you and others like you are doing across the state and across the nation. And I'm so proud to be standing with you, for you, and always will. Inauguration Day, January 20th, 2017, was a really hard day, I think, for everybody in this room, and certainly it was for me as well. But just the next day, January 21st, we started, all of us, to tell a different story. We saw women across the country marching in record numbers, along with men, to say that, well, Donald Trump may have won the election, but his values will not win in this nation. And the resistance that we demonstrated 16 months ago at the Women's March has grown, and it's grown immense. To be very clear, you all are the lifeblood of that movement. You're on the front lines, and you're setting the agenda and leading the charge. You're organizing in forgotten communities across the state and the nation and lifting up voices that have been ignored for far too long. You're getting people to the polls, and you're guaranteeing that they have the right to vote once they get there. You're encouraging new leaders to put themselves forward to run for elected office. I ran into Dan Kovatz, I think he spoke here a little bit earlier, from the Illinois County Chairs Association, who was telling me that our effort to recruit people to run in those areas of the state where no Democrats have usually run, for county board or for state rep, our efforts are paying off, and that people are stepping forward in record numbers to take those spots, to be on the ballot, to put themselves forward, to take the risk of running for public office. And honestly, some of them, many of them, are going to win. Now, this is a full-fledged movement that is changing the face of politics for the better. It's people of color who are saying that the days of carrying politicians to victory only to be ignored right after Election Day and throughout their term, those days are over. It's our young people from Parkland to Chicago rising up to say never again to gun violence, or to letting guns proliferate. It's women saying that our culture of harassment, the culture of discrimination that has poisoned our society for too long, that era is over. Time's up. Now, I'm not at all surprised that women are at the vanguard of this movement. I became a progressive Democrat, honestly, because of my mother. I was just a little kid when she took me knocking on doors for progressive Democratic candidates when most kids were playing with their Legos. She was an advocate for civil rights. She was an advocate for LGBTQ rights, for women's rights, for economic and social justice, for societal change that was, looking back on it, ahead of her time. She was fearless in all the ways that matter. She defined for me what it is to be a Democrat, to be a progressive Democrat. She defined what it is that we are for. Because, we stand against Donald Trump and the bigotry and the hatred that he espouses. And we oppose the rollback of progress. But this can never be about what we're against. I know a lot of people stepped up because of what they were afraid of and what they're against. But the truth of the matter is, this has to be about what we are for. So what are we for? We're for a quality education for every child in this state and every child in the nation, no matter the color of their skin, no matter the income level of their parents, no matter what zip code they live in. We're for universal health care because it's a right, not a privilege. We're for lifting up workers and working families, the women and men of the labor movement that built our middle class and that fight for safe working conditions and higher wages. We're for racial justice and for criminal justice reform that stops tearing apart our communities of color, and for economic justice that brings real investment and economic inclusion to forgotten communities across the state and across the nation. We're for dreamers and for protecting our immigrants who deserve to call this state and this nation their home. And we're for a government in Springfield and in Washington that brings to the table the voices of those who have been left out and left behind. As a policy advocate and now as a candidate for governor of Illinois, I've gone to neighborhoods across the city and to communities all over the state, and I've listened closely to students and workers and grandparents and teachers and faith leaders, people with disabilities and members of the LGBTQ community, immigrants and those struggling with addiction. And one thing is abundantly clear when you listen. Bruce Rauner has failed the people of Illinois. I've listened closely to those who've paid the price of his attacks on working families and on students, to those who've suffered while this governor acquiesces to Donald Trump's bigoted agenda, to those who live in the communities that Rauner has tried to pit against each other to advance his agenda. I've heard countless stories of the challenges that we face and the despair of the last 4 years and maybe more, and the deep concern for the future. But I've also heard something else. I've heard from people like Chris Cook. Chris is from the South Side, and he was working at Chicago State University, a great university in this state that needs to be supported. And he was working there when Bruce Rauner got to Springfield and unleashed his war on higher education. For Chris, Rauner's budget crisis wasn't just Springfield gridlock. It cost him his job. He was laid off along with hundreds, and I really mean hundreds of others at Chicago State. His car was repossessed. He lost his home. This is someone whose entire life was turned upside down by Bruce Rauner and his failed leadership. Chris was down, but then he got back up. He got a job as a waiter so he could make ends meet, and he applied for a doctorate program, and he's looking ahead in hopes of making a brighter future. And Chris is hopeful that a new governor and new elected officials in Springfield will make it easier for him to continue to pursue his education and get a better job. Too many Illinoisans have been knocked down by Bruce Rauner, but we're not staying down. We know it's time for a change. Progressives across the state and across the nation were knocked down in 2014 and 2016, but we're not staying down because we know that we can bring about the change that's needed, but only if we fight for it. And it's time to fight. I think that's why many of you are here. With the organizations that are in this room today, with the grassroots movement rising across the nation, with the strongest slate of Democrats running in every corner of this state and nation, we are ready for this fight. We're laying out a progressive vision defined by what we are for as Democrats and what we're going to do to move this country forward. And to be clear, and I'll reintroduce myself, I'm J.B. Pritzker, and I'm going to beat Bruce Rauner. But also, together in 2020, we're going to march to Washington, and we're going to take down Donald Trump. So we have a real fight ahead of us, and I want to ask all of you, are you ready for the fight? No, I mean louder. Are you ready for the fight? Let's go get them, everybody. Thank you very much. Thanks for being here and all the work that you do.